Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I have another job to do for a customer today. It's not an alteration though. She's given me this piece of foam. It's quite a large piece. It's 4 inches high by 16 inches square. And she's asked for a cushion cover with a zip. So that's what we're going to do today. Because I charge my time for these jobs, I don't want to put too much thought into it. So I found a website that is going to give me the cutting dimensions and take all the guesswork out of making this cushion cover for me. And it just so happens that they put a video up about a week or so ago on how to make a 30-minute cushion. So that is going to be perfect for my customer, and she's going to have something done at a relatively low cost to her. I'm going to pop a link in the description box below. There's a company called Sailrite in the USA. They have hundreds of YouTube videos showing you how to cover cushions and make all sorts of things. They also have a website where they sell upholstery fabric and all sorts of other things, double-sided tape as well. So I get a lot of people asking me where to get double-sided tape from. If you're in the US, Sailrite have it on their website. I'll pop the links in the video below, and I'll also pop a link to their latest video as well. But today we're going to be doing pretty much the same thing because it's going to be the quickest way for me to get this job done for my customer, and then I can get on to the important stuff like sewing for us. Stick around. Okay, aside from the cushion, there are only 3 things we need. I have a piece of fabric that has been cut to the size that was recommended by the Sailrite website. I'm not going to put any measurements on the screen today because everybody is going to have a different sized piece of foam, but there will be a link in the description to Sailrite's website where you can use their calculator. I have a piece of upholstery fabric here. Customer wanted blue and I happen to have some. So this is going to wrap right around the entire cushion and also up the sides. You want it coming up at least halfway up on both sides. So it has to wrap around your cushion in its entirety and then come up on both sides. So that's your fabric. We need a zip that is as wide as the cushion, and we need a slider, of course. Now, if you're not familiar with using continuous zips, you can use a regular zip. You'll just keep the zipper tape together when we get to that section in the video. This is a number 5 continuous zip. And of course, double-sided tape. I can't live without my double-sided tape. I use it all the time. And Sailrite do have that on there. They have lots of it on their website. I'm having trouble getting this particular brand in Australia at the moment, but I have got onto another company. They're sending me a sample, so I'm hoping that I can have something soon to show you. I'll test it out and see how it goes, make sure it doesn't gum up my needles. So I will have something hopefully soon to share with the Australian viewers, but I will pop links for Sailrite in the description. Let's get onto this. I'll set the zip aside for the time being. We need to cut out some corners for the boxing on the ends of the fabric, and we also need some cutouts in the centre. I will put my measurements up because every measurement that I'm giving you is based on this 16-inch piece of foam. So when you put the measurements into the website, you'll actually take off half an inch. Half an inch is the seam allowance that we're using today. The first thing you want to do, fold your fabric in half lengthwise, and we'll find the centre of that. So on the fold down here, we'll just mark the centre, and we'll do that on the other side as well. And when you open that out, you'll see I've marked a centre just here and along here. So we need to make a box corner on either side there for the middle, which will actually be one end of your cushion. For my 16-inch cushion, I need a cutout that's 2 5/8 of an inch wide. It comes in 1 7/8 of an inch. I'll position my ruler over that line, and I've got 2 5/8 inches measured out here. Just make sure that's equal on either side, and we'll come out 1 7/8 of an inch. So here we've got 1 7/8 of an inch by 2 5/8. That is 4.5 centimetres and 6.5 centimetres. And you'll repeat this for the other side. And then just double check that your measurements are right and that you have it nicely centered as well. You might notice that based on the thickness of the foam, it's actually looking quite a lot smaller, but we still have to allow for our seam allowance. So if you center that over the top of your foam, you're going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance on either side. So once you'll cut this out, but when you actually stitch it together, you'll be sewing 1/2 inch away from that cutout. So that will still give you the right size boxing for your foam piece. So that's the center one done. Let's go and do the ends. We need to do this on both sides. Now we need a cutout of 1 7/8 inches by 2 inches. There's very little difference, but I'm going to do it the way the website tells me to. This is the shorter side, 1 7/8 by 2 inches, and we need that on all 4 corners. So instead of measuring each corner, I'm just measuring 1, and then I'm going to fold the fabric in half and place the 2 pieces right side together so that I can see the marking I've drawn, and I'm going to cut both layers out at the same time. And for the other end, all you need to do is fold the fabric in half the other way, bring the 2 short edges together and line that up and cut those out individually, or you can take the square that you've cut out, you can fold these together and cut them out at the same time. I'm just going to use the cutout and do them individually. Now we have our boxed corners done for the top where the zip goes, and I'll just cut these 2 out. I'll fold that in half, cut them out at the same time, and I'll just fold the back one over to the front just to make sure that the lines match up, and all good. Now I can cut. Okay, now we have all the boxing done for our cushion cover. It's time to put the zip in. With both short ends, I've run a strip of double-sided tape along the edge there, and we now need to make a measurement 1 1/4 inches from the outside edge. So I'm just going to use the 1 1/4 inch line on my ruler, and I'll line that up with the outside edge of the fabric along here and mark that line. Remove the double-sided tape and bring the edge of the fabric right up to that line there. And that tape will secure everything in place along here. We'll do the same for the other side. So you just measure 1 1/4 inches, remove the tape and fold. We'll take the zip now and we'll run some double-sided tape along the outer edge of that as well. In hindsight, I would have actually cut the zip later once I know what size I've got here. We just want about 1 inch overhang on either side. This piece won't get wasted. It'll go into one of my puppy poo pouches, so there won't be any problem with that. Okay, let's put the zip onto our fabric. Open that out and you'll have the wrong side facing up. We'll take off one side of the tape and we're going to place this edge of the tape along the edge of the fabric here. So we want the outside edge of that tape to line up nice and evenly along that folded edge of fabric that we turned over before. And I'm not sure that you can see, but the folded edge of the fabric is just sitting over one side of those zipper teeth. So it's positioned so that when we put the 2 folds of the fabric together, you'll see barely any teeth at all when the zip's closed and when the whole piece of fabric is closed. Now we'll put the other side onto the other end. Now if you don't have a continuous zip and you're using just a regular store-bought zip that's still connected at the end, You want to make sure that that is several inches longer than the width that you've got here. And the metal bars on your zip, have them extended well out. That'll make the job a lot easier for you when you put this side on. So if you do use a regular zip, have the metal bars over this side somewhere, you'll open out your zip and then you'll take this side of the tape and put it onto the other side of your fabric. To give you an example, if this was a regular zip, you would open out the teeth all the way to the end and place the flat side down onto the other side of your fabric. But you need to make sure that everything lines up along here. Because we're using a continuous zip, I can separate this and we can flip the fabric over so that you've got the wrong side facing up. And we'll take this straight edge, we'll remove the tape, and then you'll line up the straight edge of the zipper tape along the straight edge of that folded fabric. And again, have an overhang of about 1 inch. So now what we have are 2 pieces of zipper tape attached to the edge of your fabric, and you can barely see the teeth at all. So I'm going to go and stitch right across here. I'm not going to sew too close to the teeth. I want this to be able to close properly, and if I sew too close to the teeth, there's not going to be enough movement for the edge of the fabric and it'll get caught. It just won't close up properly. Let's take this to the machine and sew it in place. It doesn't really matter whether you sew from the right side or the wrong side, but this is going to be a lot easier for you to see. I'm going to be stitching my zip down twice because every time this lady sits on it, it's going to push at the fibres. So I'm going to sew really close to the outside edge, and then I'm going to come back in about 1/4 inch and do another row of stitching. For me, it just allows a little bit more stability with the stitching, the zip and the fabric. Back stitch. And when I get to the end, I'll back stitch again. So I've secured the tape down. I'm going to come in just about 1/4 inch. Still not too close to the zipper teeth here, but 1/4 inch away from the first row of stitching I've done. It's certainly not something that you have to do. I just like my stitches to be really strong. Once that side's done, go to the other side and we will do the same. And then I'll repeat that row. Okay, our zip is in place, and now we can put our little slider on. If you're using a regular zip, you can skip that step. I want to line my zip up so that I've got the straight edges of the boxed corner here. So I can trim this back so that they're the same size, and then I can put my slide on. With the slider, you'll have the curved edge facing you. Pop it over the end there. And just give that a push. So you want to make sure that the edges of your fabric here are nicely lined up. And that's lined up well enough for me. So I do need to take the slider off all the way to the other side. And the reason for that is that it's much easier to work with your boxed corners when your zipper tape is closed at both ends. And you can just put the slider in the middle. It also means that if you're like me and you forget to leave your zip open when you're turning things through, it's much easier to do that if your slider is in the centre. So I've taken it off. I'll open that out again, pop the slider straight back into the end and repeat what I did before. I just put my fingers on either side and hopefully that's still lined up at the top there, and that the zip looks nice inside here, that it hasn't gone wonky or anything. So I'm just going to place the slide part way down, then it's out of the way for closing up the box corners after. So you'll see that the edges of the fabric when the zip is closed meet really nicely along there. And by having not sewn the edge of the fabric all the way to the end of the zip means that there's enough of a lip in the fabric that you can actually allow the zip to move freely around the fabric. Okay, let's turn this inside out and do that carefully. You don't want to open up the zip. You can stitch it closed if you need to. So we're going to line up the edge of the fabric here, have them sit nice and straight, line up the corners of the boxing and the other end as well where the fold is. So I've lined this up along the edge there. We will take this to the machine and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and on the other end we'll do exactly the same thing. Okay, so that is ready to sew. You want to make sure that when you take this to the machine that your boxing is nice and even around here on all of your corners. You can fudge it and trim off a little excess if you need to. Okay, back to the machine. So I'll back stitch here. Remember, it's a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so we're going to do that all the way to the very end. And we'll do exactly the same on the other side. When I start sewing, I actually start in just about 1/4 inch or so, and then I'll back stitch to the end and then go forward. Just helps reduce the possibility of the fabric shifting when you first start sewing. Now that both our side seams are done, it's ready to box the corners, and then we finished the project. So from the bottom edge where we've got the fold, I've made a small mark here so that I know where the center line is. You'll separate the fabric, and then this line here will line up with the seam that you've got along here. In this case, I'm going to open my seams today. It'll help distribute some of that bulk. So that center line that I've got there is lined up perfectly along the center of my seam. The edge of the fabric here is nice and even, and this one I can just manipulate that a little bit. This is out because my cutting is probably out, but I could live with that, and I'll repeat that for the other side. So I've got the fold of the fabric here, I've marked that, pull the fabric apart, open the seam again. Okay, and now we need to do the zip. I'm not going to cut my tape off just yet. I've opened up the fabric, separate the side seam, and I've got the center of that side seam lined up with the center of the zipper teeth. And you can see that this is out probably by about 1/8 inch here. I'm not going to worry too much about that because, again, this is me not cutting straight. I'm going to take my 1/2 inch seam allowance from this edge here, sew along there. That 1/8 inch kink isn't going to make much of a difference at all in the finished product. And then we'll find the other side and we'll do the same thing. This one should line up better. Open that out and you can see that this lines up really nicely. Okay, so what I'll do now is go back to the machine and sew a 1/2 inch across here. Now you guys know that I like to reinforce my stitching when I use upholstery fabric, so I'm actually going to go across this twice, and I'll do that on all 4 corners. If you're using a regular zip, you need to make sure that your zip is open at least part of the way here. Because it's a continuous zip and the slider is in the middle, I'll be able to stick my finger in there and just open that out. Okay, once again, we've got that 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'll back stitch. When I get to the area where the zip is, I'm going to triple stitch over that. I like to make sure that that's never going to come apart. And I'll go over all of that one more time for good measure. Then it's just a matter of doing the same thing on the other 3 corners. Okay, I've got all the corners done. I'm going to just finger press these side seams open so that they sit a little bit more flat when it's on the inside of the cushion. And I will adjust that when I put the cushion insert in there. And I can trim off the excess on the zipper tape. And I can now open up my zip. Where the curved edge is here, you can see a little bit of an opening there. With continuous zips, this makes life so much easier. Just pop it open and then you can get in and open your slide all the way. Let's turn this the right way around and poke out our corners, and then I'm going to have the fun job of trying to get that foam insert inside here. Not sure how I'm going to manage that with my shoulders, but we'll see what happens. The corners are out, and again I'm just going to press open that seam on the inside, and that's completely done. Let's see if I can get this in now. I really don't think I can. All right, so we might just call this part of my physio for my shoulder. Don't look. Okay, I don't know how I managed that, but it's done. So there is the finished cushion cover for this piece of foam. It's turned out really well. I've got to say it's one of the best tutorials I've actually followed, and I think this is the best cushion cover I've ever made as well. So the zip closure on the side there, the sides are nice and even down the centre, and this is really nice and sturdy. Of course, upholstery fabric makes a huge difference. But then I've got tons of that, don't I? So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. My thanks goes to Sailrite for providing a really great video for me to follow. I hope you don't mind that I've copied your tutorial so close to you releasing yours, but it came up at the perfect time. Go and check out their videos. They're really, really good. And if you're looking for that double-sided tape in the US, then you'll find plenty of it over there, as well as lots of other things. I had a look at their site and they've got lots of great tools. Postage to Australia is a bit ridiculous though. Now, as for the customer, it took me a fair bit longer than the 30 minutes that Sailrite take to make these, but certainly still a lot quicker than it would have been had I gone and mucked around with measurements to try and work it out myself. You know, my rates are $45 an hour. It took me just under an hour to do this, so I'll probably charge $40 for the labour, $10 for the material. So she'll get charged $50 for this foam cushion. If you're going to do this yourself, get a thinner piece of foam. They're much more flexible and they can bend a little bit easier. Lady didn't have much choice. That's all she could find. Didn't do my shoulder any favours at all. Catch you next time.